Hey guys, Mike here. I got to see Kong Skull Island last night, and here's a review. Anyone that knows me well enough knows that I'm all about one thing, and that's monsters. From Alien to Godzilla, as a child, I just ate it all up without any discrimination. But there's always one that I didn't quite connect with, and that was King Kong. My first introduction to the character was in Godzilla vs. King Kong. And if it wasn't obvious who I was rooting for, well... So my relationship with King Kong started off with a rocky start, seeing him just as another monster for Godzilla to, beat up. For some reason, the further away a creature is from being human, the more I want to root for them. Maybe that's why I like Alien more than Predator, even though I love both of them. As far as Kong goes, he may be the king of Skull Island, but he's not the king of all monsters. But see, here's the thing. When they announced Skull Island, I thought, oh, Legendary's doing King Kong. Okay, cool. But then I thought, wait, Legendary. As in, Legendary who just put out Godzilla and Pacific Rim. So, since then I've been holding my breath, and though I know we're probably never going to get a Godzilla King Kong Pacific Rim crossover, we're still getting King Kong versus Godzilla. And I cannot be more excited after this film. After 2014 Godzilla, I met this with some skepticism. I didn't think a King Kong movie would really be able to sell me on Legendary's Kaijuverse, even though it doesn't take much to sell me on a Kaijuverse. I still liked 2014 Godzilla. I think it has one of the best, or one of my favorite movie moments of all time. And the first act of 2014 Godzilla was really good. It took a real human side and sort of look into this world. Even if it wasn't focusing on the star of the movie, who was Godzilla, and put him sort of in the background, that was kind of okay. For an introduction to this universe, I felt that was appropriate. But what they did then, killing off the more interesting of the human characters, setting another one off to the side, and then focusing on one that was rather bland, that's where it went wrong. But Kong Skull Island has a lot more interesting characters than 2014 Godzilla did. We have John Goodman, Samuel L. Jackson, Tom Hiddleston, Brie Larson, and John C. Reilly. Which might seem like an odd pick with that cast, but it makes sense later on when you are introduced to the character. I'm going to try and stay away from some plot details in this review, because I don't feel that's necessary for someone to know about going into a film. In fact, I like to go in as clean as possible. But I will say that they do some world building for this Kaijuverse. And it's very evident that they're heading towards a crossover, because right from the beginning... Right when the plot starts kicking in, we're introduced to John Goodman's character, who is part of the Monarch organization. And you might remember Monarch from the 2014 Godzilla, where Ken Watanabe was part of who's searching for Godzilla. Now they're searching for another monster, and they don't know what. And that brings them to Skull Island. So now we have the Monarch organization and a connection to the Godzilla universe that they set up in the previous film. They even give an explanation as to why or how these giant monsters are going unnoticed, aside from a remote island that's completely surrounded by a storm that no one can get to. There's another reason that they touch on, and they kind of hinted on this in the 2014 Godzilla movie, now that I'm thinking about it, but it wasn't really explained or elaborated on. And they do a little bit of that, and it's, some pseudoscience, mumbo-jumbo, that oh yeah, hey, this is a theory that I have. There's giant monsters. But it works for what the film is. The visuals are striking in this film, and they invoke a lot of Apocalypse Now sort of vibes, with the way they shoot the sunset with the characters in the foreground, silhouetting King Kong. It looks very nice, and especially when you focus on the character of Samuel L. Jackson and his military outfit that are there as a sort of escort, it really starts to feel like they were like, hey, what if King Kong But Apocalypse Now, and it works really well. It's not just Apocalypse Now. They end up taking a lot of inspiration from other sources that I felt, and one of those that were very evident to me was Predator. Now, Sam Jackson's crew is just as much Apocalypse Now as it is Predator, and it's sort of a weird blend if you think about it, but I felt that it worked. Now, there might be some people that disagree with me, but I dug it. I never really formed a real connection with any of the human characters. This is most likely because they spend a lot of time focusing on a lot of different characters. Sort of the opposite problem of Godzilla 2014, where they killed off or didn't focus on any of the interesting characters. Whereas this, there's a lot of interesting characters, but they're all split up because they inevitably get split up. But you're jumping back and forth between this party and this party and this party, and you never really get a sense, you never really get the chance to really form a bond with these characters, so that when some moments happen, you don't really feel the full impact. But like I said, it's a huge improvement over the Godzilla 2014 movie, But Mike, I can hear you say in my head, what about Kong? What about Kong? Boring stuff aside, let's talk giant monsters. Just like in the previous Godzilla film, Kong feels like a character. He's not just this mindless monster rampaging around. He's a real character who has his own motives, his own sort of weight in this world. One thing I loved about the 2014 Godzilla is the subtle body movements and expressions of this giant lizard monster who clearly was just sick of this shit. He didn't want to deal with the Muto, and he was just kind of this grumpy old man who was just like, oh, okay, whatever, let's get to it. And that I thought was an interesting sort of take on other Godzillas, where they're just like, oh yeah, let's save the world, or I am a rampaging force of destruction, and I'm to be feared. But it was sort of like, Godzilla's a character, and he has his own sort of personality. And King Kong definitely has a personality, and they spend a lot more time with King Kong, which makes that aspect work a lot more than in Godzilla. Like I said, throughout the film we have a lot of time with Kong. Kong interacting with the humans in one way or another, and Kong interacting with the other creatures of Skull Island, and there are other creatures on Skull Island. Kong may be king, but there are things trying to dethrone him, and it's a constant struggle, and not just for Kong, but for the humans who have to face other things that they don't even know how to comprehend. So there's a lot of monsters. Every time a new one popped up on screen, I just got this stupid grin on my face. Skull Island is everything I wish 2014 Godzilla would have been. It's got interesting human characters to follow around, and it prominently features the title character doing lots of awesome stuff. If they can keep up this momentum with the next two films and make Godzilla King of Monsters and Godzilla vs. King Kong just as good as Skull Island, then I won't have any complaints. Visuals, the cinematography, the action shots were even framed in an interesting sort of like almost reminiscent of the old monster movies with the camera movements. Like I said, it's sort of, when you think of it, it's a sort of a mess. You got like Apocalypse Now and old kaiju movies, and you've got Predator, and you've got like all these other sort of influences, but they're all melded together in a way that really works. And it's very interesting, never boring to look at. As a fan of movies, I really enjoyed this film. And as a fan of monster movies, I loved this film. It was so fun to watch, and it wasn't just mindless awesome action. It felt like it mattered. It felt like the actions of it felt like the human characters actually mattered. They actually made a difference, wherein, they could have just been easily swept aside, focused on the monster. But I think they found a good balance between King Kong and these human characters. It's not to say the movie is without its flaws. One flaw in particular that actually bothered me was the common issue of suddenly Kong. By this I mean, when there's a giant monster that one would notice. There's a few moments where, for dramatic tension, Kong just suddenly appears. And that's sort of my one big issue with the movie. But other than that, to me, Godzilla will always be king. But Kong has proven himself to be a formidable foe, and I can't wait to see him in Godzilla vs. King Kong. But before then, we have Godzilla, King of Monsters. And if Legendary's Kaiju verse continues with this strength, with this momentum, then I am going to be very excited to see what they do. And if the next two films go over well, I hope they consider, opening it up a bit. Let's get that Pacific Rim crossover. Let's have the Jaegers fighting against Godzilla or King Kong, or you know what? Get Gamera. Just get Gamera in there too. Just give us the big three. I don't even have words to describe how awesome that would be. But anyways, thank you for watching this review. Hopefully it informed you well enough and helped you decide if you want to see this movie. I think it's definitely worth seeing, especially if you love monster movies. Even if you don't like monster movies, it's a very nice film to look at, and I think there's a lot in there for other people to watch and enjoy. Oh, and in case I needed to tell you, there is a post-credit scene, so stick around.